Welcome to another episode of Franky D Crafter. This week we're crafting a boss room for our Gravelord build. And what better place to have this fight than at the catacombs. Catacombs? Then at the okay, we got it. Pum pum pum. Let's get this project started. I know I want to give the illusion of a room, but I don't want to make it square. I round off one end and layer 2 cardboards on that side. One of them acting as support for a platform I plan to place dead in the middle of it. Let's start working on our bits. They are the little building blocks we'll be using to make this boss room happen. I plan to use different sized bricks and structures on the wall to create all types of patterns. My way of making a wall more interesting. We'll start with these columns here. I use my ruler to guide my initial shape, but from there, it's all freehand. Don't forget to texture the pink foam. This is a step better done before you start detailing. When you're ready to start on your second one, use your first one as your guide. I plan to make 3 of these, 2 for the lower level and 1 for the upper one. I want to make sure I break patterns between the levels. I already have my bricks for the wall, but we need tiles for the floor. And I bet you're asking yourself, why doesn't he just grid a pink foam piece? Well, because I want to test something out. I want to have a reasonable gap between the tiles and have some dirt residue where the grout would normally be. I want to try to make this look pretty dirty. I mean, it's a catacomb. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. I'm so devoted to this messy look that I didn't even make all the tiles the same height. It's a dangerous decision given that we love to put scattered terrain on top of these pieces. It's a decision I'm willing to follow through to give the piece a bit more character. I'm only planning on having 1 wall for this craft. The room entrance will be hinted at by a destroyed section in the front of the room. It's as simple as taking some of your tiles and breaking them up. Let's break pattern on the floor with some smaller tiles in the middle of the room. It's at this point that we start to get things together. Let's get the columns up on the wall and start laying bricks. This is pretty much the same process we've used in the lighthouse video. I planned out for 3 window-like shapes on the wall, but then decided to only go with 2 of them. The brickwork would have looked extremely messy if I did 3. I cut out a boomerang-like shape. Then I cut that in half, and now I have my 2 levels. I like to think of playability when I make all these pieces. The more platforms I have, the more possibility I give my players to come up with something creative while we play. The key thing I try to keep in mind for this build is patterns and textures. I take my time to think about every single surface I'm putting on this diorama to make sure nothing is plain. I try to texture everything as much as possible. Halfway through the craft, I realized that it looks a lot better when I cut my bricks in half. The best thing about this decision is that I essentially doubled my bricks by simply doing this. This is looking pretty cool so far. Let's add a broken wall to the first floor. It just seems like the right thing to do. Plus, if you ever decide to use this room for something else, you can always have the catacombs infested by rats. This is where we start to hide all of our cardboard. Cut another small column of bricks and call it a day. Easy peasy. It is at this moment where I realize I made my first mistake. The best way I could have done this is to add PVA glue to the windows, then place the skulls, and then throw the sand over the windows. I let my impatient mind get the best of me, and I started hot gluing the skulls to the diorama. This made the step where I had to add the PVA glue to the walls behind the skulls extremely difficult. Don't be a Franky, take your time. I started adding sand. Really fine sand. Then once that dries, I add thicker sand. I feel like there was a better way to do this, but I kinda just spaced out in this step. Despite that, I think it came out pretty great. I go back to make the hole on the wall bigger. It just didn't look right to me. I also added some bricks and some skulls. And you know, we're in the catacombs. Same old, same old. Let's continue with something to help with the mood of the encounter. We're gonna be making candles, son. I'm not doing anything new here. Same old process. It's a classic Q-tip, toothpick, and hot glue trick. I make about 50 of them. I figured that if I didn't use them in this project, I'll eventually use them in something else. And what better time to make them than now? I had momentum on my side. You can always check my previous episode for more tiny crafts for dioramas. Next step is to make the pillars, but I wanted to make them look like they belonged in a place of death. I went with the tomb look for the bottom section. I was also lucky enough to run out of plastic wrap at the right time, because I was left with this cardboard roll, and I wanted some thick pillars. It is at this moment that I realized there was a world outside of my craft room. It was time to finally see the sun again. It had been months now. I wondered if I would recognize anything at this point. Would the sound of society drive me into a caveman-like berserk madness? Luckily it didn't. I had my good friend keep me company. This is Cooper. You might have met him in the last episode. Also known as Coop Scoop. Also known as Coopops, also known as the Coopster, aka Scoop D-O-double-G, aka Mini Scooper, aka Scooby-Doo, aka Bradley Cooper. Sometimes it's nice to just go outside and feel the sun. This was a good day. Oh right, I'm a tutorial channel. Where was I? Give me a second. Oh wait, there we go. Let's hit some color theory. Cool versus warm. I paint my walls with some yellowish undertones, and randomize some red ones in there too. I paint the floor tiles with a cool underpaint of blue-gray, and I do the same to the pillars. Trust me, this might look weird right now, but eventually you won't even consciously notice it. We start adding our gray to it, almost like a dry brush. We do this multiple times, each time using a lighter gray. We get started on making our dirt look like actual dirt. This is where I start to add the wash. For all the grays, I use black, and for all the dirt, I use brown wash. Simple enough. On the floor, I do mix it up a little bit. This next step is one of my forbidden hidden techniques, top secret. I know you guys can keep a secret, so do not tell everyone you know. Here it is. I'm sure a few crafters have lost the use of their hands due to massive death-inducing cramps this technique can cause. Then use a tissue to clean any unnecessary pulling or your own blood. Next step is to start gluing your candles. I mark where I want them with a white spot that I then work my way out of to a yellow. I don't add red this time, keeping it simple, and as somebody else pointed it in my last video, it's unnecessary. I use hot glue, not worrying about the mess, since I can always use it as melted wax. Since I experimented with source lighting on my last video, I figured I'd take it to the next step with this episode. I take everything I learned from the first video and apply it to this build. This was actually one of my favorite parts of the build. To get more wax strips from the candle, I grabbed a smooth metal and applied hot glue to it, making droopy shapes. Since hot glue doesn't stick well to smooth metal objects, I was able to peel it off extremely easy. I spent a bit more time emphasizing details by adding extra washes to some areas, making sure all my source lighting made sense, and by adding black lines to some of my tiles. Next step is to make some sexy platforms for my players to use to get the higher ground. Like that's gonna make a difference in this fight. Ha! I laugh in the face of my players. I basically make bridges out of my ready to use planks. Easy as hell when the material is ready to go. Just let that dry and we'll take a look at what everything looks like put together. On a side note here, I like to keep an artist mentality when it comes to my crafts. Just because the video is done does not mean that the craft is. While working on this, I realized that I can make the Gravelord base look a lot better. I added elements from the boss room to make it all come together. I was finally happy with the base. One of the things I love about some of these projects I'm making is that ready to use material I spoke in this build and on the lighthouse build. It truly helps having them around. It wouldn't be a bad idea to sit down every once in a while and craft a whole bunch of it. Might add candles to that mix. I could not be any happier with how this project came out. If you want to make your own, don't forget to tag me on Instagram. This is one of those projects you're gonna want to show off to your friends. Or if not, at least show off my video to them right now. Meanwhile, you know what I'm saying? I think you know what I'm saying. Right? All of that other YouTube stuff that keeps the lights on in this little studio of mine. And like always, love to the patrons. Thanks a lot for the love. And I'll catch you on the next one. Peace!